Hello, welcome to the Daily Flock. Quack, quack. Flocky says, told you they were taking an offensive lineman. And look, they took an offensive lineman who made all the sense in the world. Uh, I wrote about this a ton at Ravens on SI, talked to people about these possible scenarios literally for months around the league. Um, and it was going to come down to that sweet spot that they were talking about. And yeah, there's always the possibility of trading up in certain scenarios. And we know they love to trade back, but with the needs they have right now and the way this offensive line class stacked up, it was always going to be more likely than not. Again, as we've written repeatedly, and even the Liar's Lunch, I think, was a strong tell that, like, hey, prepare yourself for what's going to be seen as maybe a pragmatic pick, but it doesn't mean it will not be an incredibly impactful pick because this isn't just a guard. This is a plug and play Pro Bowl ready guard who has all pro potential, who, again, one evaluator said, if you squint, you can see Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson went 5th overall a few years back to the Colts and was being talked about as a future Hall of Famer. So we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But this is what they do. And look, if Caden Proctor and Vega Ioane are both on the board, who knows? I didn't think they both were going to be. I kind of thought Harbs would take Ioane at 10. And if Arizona goes offensive line and takes the kid from Miami at 3 instead of the running back, I got news for you. Harbs is taking a different offensive lineman in all likelihood, and it may have changed the calculus for the Ravens. But you can only control what you control. They did what we thought they would do. And you could see and hear from rookie head coach Jesse Minter and veteran GM Eric DaCosta just how excited, for good reason, they were about this pick.
Pretty excited. There may be a video that comes out at some point where you'll see his reaction, but he was very excited. Obviously, he is a guy that we put a lot of time in the eval process. Probably, very, 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 very high up there on Coach Sledford's list of favorite players in the draft, and worked out for us.
We can get the best player at his position in the draft, which we've done a lot, and kind of take pride in that. So we think he's a great fit for us and certainly going to help the players around him on the offensive line. They'll help him as well, but I think he's going to make us better and really make the middle of our offense very strong.
Jesse Minter there was referencing Dwayne Ledford, their new offensive line coach, one of the more experienced coaches on staff. And again, I'm going to keep plugging it because I'm proud of the work we're doing. I think Ledford's one of their key additions, and you can go to Ravens on SI, three biggest Ravens off-seasons additions. He's there for me. They had to go offense. Jesse Minter's going to fix the defense. Declan Doyle, 30-year-old offensive coordinator, just turned 30, never done it before. He needs help up front. He can't be trying to solve a Rubik's Cube of who can play guard for me and who can play center and who steps up if Ronnie Stanley gets hurt. That's untenable, and that's going to continue to be addressed throughout the day. And that's something, again, you can see the rundown there that we're going to discuss. So let me set the stage for you a little bit before we talk a little bit more about Mr. Vega, that mountain of a man, and what he had to say last night upon becoming a Baltimore Raven, which kind of seemed like his birthright. Like he looks like a Raven and he plays like a Raven. So we are going to discuss that. We'll talk about what else could they have done, right? Like, what's the one other thing that they really could have done there? And I think that's Ruben Bain. And we talked to Marty Herney. How great was he? We're going to hear from Marty regularly on this show, setting the stage for all this yesterday. But that's a scenario we talked about. So we will discuss that a little bit. There is always an opportunity cost, right, in the draft of, okay, what you took versus what you could take and how that plays out. But again, they did what they were always going to do and what they should have done, in my estimation. We will look at Friday and Saturday prospects with a particular eye towards Friday. What do I think is possible, even probable for them to do in day 2 of the draft? And then I've got a trade option that's not going to cost them much for a veteran player. It's probably not the one you're thinking of, but if they came away with this guy by the end of the weekend, I'd be happy about it. So that's what we'll get to on the show. All right. Vega. Everything about him checks every box they look for. Eric DaCosta talked about best of breed players. That's sort of what they're into, right? And Linderbaum, we can go back to that pick. Was that a little high for an undersized center? In the eyes of the league, it was. But they looked at him as, for that draft class, for what was a big need for them, as a best of breed. And they did it. You can look at that with Kyle Hamilton. You can look at that with Malachi Starks. Like when those scenarios have emerged, um, that's what they do. I think it's further confirmation of their best player available at position of need, which they should be, by the way, which they should be. They're not, especially right now in this moment of time going into this season with all this uncertainty and all this newness, they can't afford to get cute. They couldn't afford to say, well, let's take the safety from Oregon because we really love him and we do cool stuff with safeties and we just think he's a great football player. Like, no, they had to address offensive line. They had to do it in a meaningful way. This kid doesn't have to be motivated. You don't have to light a fire under him. All the sort of intangibles from a mental aspect, from a toughness aspect, from a will and determination aspect, that's baked into his cake. That's already there. You don't have to tell him to hit the weight room. You don't have to tell him that we want to continue to block people into the ground and maybe even below the ground. That's all there. He's going to fit into sort of what we think their culture is going to be, which Minter is like Harbaugh. It's not going to be drastically different. And again, I think that's largely a good thing. And I think this kid just gets it. And I think this young man had already in his mind kind of started seeing himself as a Raven. And when you listen to him talk last night and some of the immediate interviews he did with Ravens in-house people, you could see that. So let's start with that element of physicality because that's got a lot to do with this. How does Ione see himself as a mauler of sorts?
For me, it's hard to not see things for how they are. I've seen a lot of mock drafts, things like that, of me coming there. I've definitely pictured myself blocking for all those people over there. Great players, but for me, when I get there, I'm bringing my pass protection. That's something I work on every day. Same thing for the run game. On the pass game, I'm coming in with the mentality that I'm not trying to get beat. Nobody's gonna touch my quarterback, and as simple as that. In the run game, same mindset of being a mauler. I'm trying to open up lanes for our running back, protect the running back in that case, and just play ball.
I don't know if you could see it or not, but Flocky was winking as he said that. Like he's speaking to Flocky there. And I think he's speaking to anybody who's watched Ravens football over the years when they were the bully, when they did prioritize size and strength and physicality over maybe value and well, we're gonna get better with him in 2 years when he gets healthy again, or oh, he's a little smaller, but we can do this and that to cover up with that with scheme and whatever. No, man, this is plug and play, and this is a young man who's all ball and who embraces the most physical elements of this sport. So they've spent time with him, they know him. It didn't take them long in the interview process or casual conversations to understand that he gets it. I think he also gets, despite the fact that everybody's talking him up right now, and rightfully so, and despite the fact that there's no question about where he is on the depth chart. Like he's the best guard on this football team right now, and it's not even close. But how is Vega himself viewing that pecking order?
Man, biggest thing for me is coming in and proving myself and earning my role. I come in there. There's a lot of great players in the O line room, a lot of great players on the team itself. So for me, being surrounded by great players like that is just going to make me better, and that's all I can ask for.
I appreciate what the young man is saying there. That's what he has to say. There's not a lot of great players in that offensive line room, which is why they were going to lean into this sweet spot. If it was remotely close to being a sweet spot, um, I think he's immediately the third best tackle, and maybe the second best left tackle on that team, because I just think that would be a big ass for Rosengarten right now. He's definitely their best interior offensive lineman right now. And I think it would be difficult to even really sort of, try to question that. Um, and again, like I don't want to like attach too much gravity to this because it at the end of the day, it's an interior offensive lineman. But I think you could hear it in DeCosta's voice when he talked about this guy's never even put on like a Ravens uniform yet. And DeCosta said he's going to make our other players better. And trust me, I believe him. I believe him. Because the center situation is something that they're going to address at some point this weekend. But the Kalen Rutledge kid, who I thought would be someone who, if he made it past 32, they would maybe move up for. Wrote about that at Ravens on SI. He goes in the first round, which was always possible. So now we're probably looking more at addressing another interior offensive lineman or two, and certainly someone with a particular ability to already snap the ball day 3. So that's a whole lot more projection. So the center situation, Ronnie Stanley towards the end of his career, knowing his injury history, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. What about walking into a locker room with guys like Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson?
Those what great players those guys are, man. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, all those guys. My thing is coming in and earning my keep. I gotta earn the right to block for those guys. That's how I think about things. So, me coming in, that's my biggest goal.
Yeah. He gets it across the board. If you weren't already sort of understanding or getting your head around why a guard at 14 for a team that doesn't have enough dudes to catch the ball right now and hasn't had enough pass rush forever, if you know anything about, again, this draft, the strength, the weaknesses, the sweet spots, where it falls off a cliff, this whole scenario for the Ravens was really out of central casting. If you were going to do a Ravens draft day movie about 2026, this was a plot that they were all rooting and hoping for, and understandably so. I do want to know what you guys think about the pick. You can go to my Twitter at Jason Locken4. I'm not going to call it X most of the time. It's Twitter. I've got a poll up there, Daily Flock poll of the day. It's something I want to do daily. I'll be better about doing it daily. This is new, first couple of days. Obviously the draft, a lot going on. But basically, what do you think about this pick? Are you as fired up as Flocky and I are about it? Are you just kind of excited about it, or are you meh? So you could check that out. And eventually I'll maybe move those polls over to the Daily Flock Twitter handle as well. And again, I'm waiting to see who will send the first email to flock you, flock me, flock off at gmail.com. We will do a regular email segment on this show. And also, because I know some people out there have this perception that I'm just like Mr. Negative, negative, negative all the time. As we get into the flow of the show, I do want to have Festivus Fridays. So even if they're 0-4, I'm going to have some feel-good Raven story for you on a Friday. We will be doing Festivus Fridays. I'm not saying the whole show's going to be gaga, rah-rah, pom-poms. There's plenty of people who do that all the time, 5 to 7 days a week. But, you are going to be able to get my impression on something that's going really well for them. And you're going to get it regularly, but there will be Festivus Friday. So a couple of PSAs for you there. Okay, let's go down the rundown there. Other options they could have done here in trade. Again, we talked a great interview. Pat myself on the back. Great insights from Marty Herney yesterday. I was just a conduit. And we discussed Bain. And what if Bain gets past the Andy Reids of the world in the top 10? And what if he gets past the Saints and he gets to 11? And we figured Miami would trade out of 11 in that scenario. And they did, right? They ended up trading with Dallas so they could get Caleb Downs, who I thought Dallas was going to get him in mock. I thought they might be able to get him at 20, but figured they were going to get him. Then what would that mean for the Ravens? Now, they wouldn't with Vega. Now, when Marty and I talked about it, it's like, well, what if Harbaugh takes Vega at 10, right? Which didn't happen because he was able to get an offensive lineman at 10 who a lot of people thought was the pick at 3 if they didn't go running back. So wasn't quite apples to apples with how it turned out. But we did discuss Reuben Bain, what a fit Reuben Bain would be for the Baltimore Ravens. But I think you have to also look at this through the prism of what else is available, what else is available in the rest of this draft. And the D-line got picked through maybe a little bit more than we thought in the first round, but there were going to be a lot of defensive linemen, especially interior defensive linemen, on day 2 who might have being as good or better than some of the day 1 guys because there wasn't a whole lot of day 1 guys. And we knew what they felt about Vega. And again, I continue to hear Caden Proctor as well as 2 guys who come in and can change the course of this franchise immediately, short term and long term. But Bain versus Vega, that exact calculus, player for player, both on the board. We're not trading down. We're not getting cute. Yeah, I would have said Vega all day long. I am a little surprised that Bain made it as far as he did. Marty was surprised. A lot of college scouting guys, other team executives I spoke to are a little surprised. And I think he's going to end up in great hands there with where he landed. But I'm sure there was some, at least a little bit of conversation, probably not a whole lot though, because ultimately um, the Ravens did what I think they've been signaling to you for a while that they were going to do, what the industry expected them to do. So I don't think there was a whole lot of sweating and hand wringing over that, over the circumstance that actually arose with both those players being available. Okay, that brings us to today. And the Ravens now are sitting on 10 picks. And this is a really interesting draft already, right? Because the Rams, who are in win now mode, uh, at least somebody in their franchise, I don't think it was Sean McVay, thought so little of this first round. And these are the best players available that they took a quarterback that they probably could have got with their next pick, or at least traded in the middle of the second round and maybe got him. And the Buffalo Bills, who are in win now mode, and they've got a rookie head coach and they've got a lot of pressure on them, they felt so little about the players available. They traded like 3 times back. So the Ravens have 10 picks of what's remaining, and they're going to use them all. And they're all going to turn out to be players in this draft where the first round, the team at 3 couldn't get anybody to give them anything to move up and take that off their hands. So they took a running back who's kind of a weird pick for them. And 4 took a wide receiver who doesn't run like a number 1 wide receiver at 4 because they didn't love what was left on the defensive side where they really wanted to get better. They should have taken the corner. And I think they'll regret that. But with that being the draft we're in, and they're sitting on all these day 2 and day 3 picks, they're really not going to move around. Let's go back to that liar's lunch. What did Eric DeCosta have to say about being aggressive?
Finney on the player and who that is and how highly we have him rated. So if we've got a bunch of guys kind of rated the same way, and we like one of those guys, the chances of us going up and giving up a ton to get that guy probably wouldn't be something that we do. But if we have a guy that's kind of at a different level on the board who we think really comes in right away and can impact our team, certainly we'd be aggressive in that situation and potentially move up to get that guy.
Yeah, let's do that today. I'm gonna promote here again because this product is very much intertwined with the writing I'm doing on a daily basis. Talked to a lot of evaluators about, okay, the first round is hard to predict, but let's say it goes somewhat the way we're talking about it going. What should these guys do take day 2 with 10 picks in their pocket and 10 offensive linemen off the board? Because that's what we were thinking would happen. And that's basically what happened. And they get in on that rush. But like Declan Doyle still needs more help, right? And yeah, Declan Doyle still needs more help. He needs somebody to win for him downfield. So in that article, 3 day 2 prospects to be prepared to trade up for. One of the young men we highlighted went with the 32nd pick. And I wrote in that article, like, John Schneider loves this guy in Seattle. And like John Schneider will try to trade down, but it's going to have to be value. And he very well could take the other Notre Dame running back, who I think would have been an absolute steal for the Ravens if they could have moved up a spot or 2, or especially just stayed where they are with their first pick Friday night and taken him, Jadarian Price. And so that happened at 32. So one of those day 2 trade up options is off the board. Why did I feel so strongly about that? Well, because I spent a weekend looking at the age 32 season of basically every running back in the history of the NFL since the merger in 1970, and everybody starts falling off a cliff. Walter Payton was still good. He wasn't great. He wasn't sweetness. Like one guy who had a career outlier season at age 32 was Ricky Williams. Ricky Williams was not your normal age 32 running back, right? He basically spent 3 years in the abyss, suspended or messing around in the CFL. He had 1,000 fewer carries at this stage of his career than Derrick Henry has going into his age 32 season. I'm talking about NFL carries, not CFL. Bigger field. It's a different game. So yeah, that would give me a lot of pause. And the running back room is presently constructed with Justice Hill's injury history throughout his career and where he is at this stage of his career, and no more Keaton Mitchell to do some of that Keaton Mitchell stuff. And Ali, is an interesting guy, but if he had to do anything close to 15 touches a game because Derrick Henry's hit the wall or Derrick Henry's hurt, No thanks. But he's gone. Eli Stowers is still there, and the Ravens better get a size, speed, matchup, downfield pass catcher. I talked to a lot of people about this draft, and I had a lot of people tell me that Stowers had just about as close to a first round grade as Sadiq, and you're going to be able to get him much lower, and you're going to be able to get him with value. But how much lower than this going into day two? I'm not sure. And look, the kid from Baylor who's got some personality, maybe character quirks. There's other athletic move tight ends. He's not the only option, but I also think this is a massive need. I don't want Declan Doyle doing this for the first time to have to rely on scheme and ingenuity and guile and like all these things that he doesn't really have yet because he's never done it before. And frankly, the totality of the staff, and it's something I'll write about more as we get on the other side of this draft, like Joe Lombardi's never created an offense that did anything. In fact, you look at Matthew Stafford and you look at Justin Herbert and you go and rewatch those games with Lombardi calling plays, it was ugly. He didn't last more than 2 years anywhere. When Jim Caldwell fires you in season about 7 games into your second year there, it's probably not going that good. And they had talent then in Detroit. So, like, there ain't any mastermind offensively in that building. Like, I think Marcus Brady's the best of the bunch, but like, so get him players and get him players starting soon. And I would not be content, again, with 10 of these things in my back pocket to just sit there. The other issue, we just talked about Bain, right? Bain versus Vega, D-line, 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 D-line. We don't know about Namdi. We don't know what that's going to look like. Nobody can predict that future. We do know what it looks like having to play, well, I don't know, 14, 15 games without him and having to ask Travis Jones to be the man. And what do we have left in Brody and whatever else? And oh, yeah, Mike Green can rush some from the inside. And I think there's free agents they should be looking at too. But Dominique Orange, if they grabbed him, D tackle at Iowa State, evaluators I know and trust, evaluators who specialize in defensive line, evaluators who coached defense before. They love this kid. They think this kid projects to be the best interior D lineman in this outside of whatever you want to call the guys up top. You got linebackers who could do this or that. Of guys not going in the first round, they think the most impactful interior defensive player in the draft. They think he projects and has more natural pass rush than some of these other guys. They love the body type. They love a lot about this young man. And you're going to hear more about, the kid from Ohio State, McDonald, and that's all fine. But for the Ravens and their needs and whatever, Dominique Orange, Iowa State is somebody who, if we're talking about him on the show next week, I'm pretty excited. I think he's going in the second round. We'll have to see about that. Also, did a exercise because they need more than one offensive lineman. Which offensive line prospects fit in each round of the Ravens? One to highlight in each round of the Ravens for the Ravens. The center out of Alabama, Parker Brailsford, boy, that's going to be an interesting young man for me to see what happens with him on Saturday. A team captain there in just 1 year there. Undersized like Linderbaum, but there's a lot of fight in this dog. He interests me. Bo Stevens, interior offensive lineman from Iowa, was around that program for 5 years. Kirk Ferentz loves him. He's dabbled at a bunch of different positions. Could he be a late stage, end of the draft, Swiss Army knife kind of guy they can develop like what they did with Pat McCary back in the day? And boy, did they get value there. I'm not saying he's going to be able to play tackle like McCary could. No, I'm not trying to infer that. But as a guy who could apprentice at a bunch of different spots and come in and help fill some gaps as injuries emerge. Pat Coogan, the center from national title winning Indiana Hoosiers, he interests me as well. So those are names that, again, maybe some of those are guys we're talking about on Saturday, and you can read more about all these prospects at Ravens on SI. You can find all my work there. And then look, let's wrap the show by talking about a trade the Ravens could make that doesn't involve draft picks. AJ Brown, that didn't happen. It's not going to happen until the other side of June 1st, and I don't think it's going to be with the Ravens. Kyle Pitts, I'd much rather get Eli Stowers in the second round today at that price point and have him in my building the whole time and have him as fresh clay to mold than worry about, Pitts and what he's going to want and, renting him for a year on the tag. And are we going to get a deal done? And like, I don't know, man. And the light bulb came on kind of late for him. And I just go get a slot winning receiver today. Your guy in the draft. So I'd be really surprised if they did anything sexy, but I'd love to see what they could do with Anthony Richardson. I really could. I don't think it's going to take anything to get him. Talk to an advanced scout about him who, had seen him play some his rookie year. And I get it. It's 2023 and he's been hurt a lot since then. But come on, the Colts situation wasn't great. They didn't handle that very well across the board. And he's like, go back and watch what he did against the Rams in 2023. And I did. And I'm like, yeah, man. He needs a change of scenery. It's not going to take much to get him. You're installing a new offense. Like, is Lamar going to be there for 80% of the OTAs to get the $750,000 that he didn't care about last year? I don't think they could guarantee that. I don't think anybody could guarantee that. Snoop Huntley, who found, a career revival last year, but now it's unfamiliar coaches, unfamiliar situations, new offense, different people. I don't know. This time last year, the Ravens thought Cooper Rush was much better than him. I don't know. Like, I'm looking at Declan Doyle coming from a Sean Payton coaching family tree where they did this Taysom Hill thing, and it worked out damn well for them. Do we want Lamar carrying on short yardage situations? Now, it's not like you put Richardson on the field and it's absolutely, they're definitely running the ball. Like, it's not like he can't complete a forward pass. It's not like he can't do things outside the pocket. And Lamar is coming up on age 30. Anthony Richardson is a whole different level of explosion, twitch, and athleticism than Snoop Huntley. And so if Snoop's able to come in and do some of that stuff, what could this guy do? How fired up would he be to be in an organization like this with in the same locker room, as Lamar Jackson? What's it going to take to get him? One of those 5 million fifth-round picks you have? I don't know, man. Like, I'm really intrigued by that. And I think the depth in the quarterback room is always important. And as much as, Huntley surprised us last year, there's been a lot of times where watching Huntley play, it's like, what are we doing here? So just some food for thought there. I make the case for Richardson. Have I always been a little bit of a Richardson truther maybe? I guess, you could put that on me. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Jason Lockenfor. The Daily Flock Show is on Twitter. If I don't know if you're watching this on Twitter or on YouTube, but if you want, to subscribe and get alerts whenever we go live, you can go to youtube.com/ at Big Play Baltimore. Having a blast working with everybody at Big Play. I'm so glad they're in this market, and I love what we're doing. And then, yeah, we'll see whoever. Eventually, I think we're going to have merch. So I will say this: whoever is the first person to send us an email at flockoff@gmail.com. When we get the merch up and running, there's a hoodie in your future on me. So we will be back on Monday. I will line up more great guests for next week. Again, our production schedule is a little different now than I think it's going to eventually be. But again, love what I'm doing here. Appreciate everybody who's tuned in. And more great things are to come. Enjoy the rest of the draft. We will see you on the Daily Flock on Monday. Call.